Hello and welcome to Orthodox Christian Television. I'm Vincent Neiman, your host, and joining me once again for this third and final program on ecumenism are Father Michael Halford, who is a deacon at the Cathedral of St. Markellas, an Old Calendar Greek Orthodox church in Astoria, and the reader Timothy Fisher, who is attending the Russian Orthodox Church of the Holy Fathers of the Seven Ecumenical Council in Manhattan. Welcome once again, gentlemen.
It's good to be back.
Thank you.
And Father Michael, could you briefly recap our last program for the viewers just joining us for the first time?
Well, in the last program, we discussed the ecumenical movement and why there is an old calendar and a new calendar church. And at the end of the last program, I recapped that the Pope in 1582 decided, for whatever reason, to remove a certain number of days from the calendar to create the so-called Gregorian calendar. And that most of the Western world now is on this Gregorian calendar, and that the Orthodox world was on the Julian calendar up until 1922-23.
Wasn't this a suggestion of sorry to interrupt you, a papal astronomer or something who mathematically said that...
well, it was based on a belief that the winter and summer solstices had shifted over time and that they needed to be somehow reconciled back to a certain day on the calendar.
Well, why is there such a debate over the church calendar? Is the new calendar a heresy, as some say?
If the church, in its wisdom, decided in an ecumenical council to change the calendar, the church could change the calendar. But this was not brought about by ecumenical council, by a change in the decision of the mind of the church. This calendar change was imposed upon Orthodox churches by force. As we discussed in the previous program, as the Roman Catholic Church imposes religion upon its own people and upon its converts by force, this calendar change was imposed by force upon the Orthodox world. And not all of the Orthodox world went along with it, and it created schism. Now you have those churches which are on the old calendar. Primarily the Slavic countries are still on the old calendar, the Church of Bulgaria, the Church of Russia, the Church of Serbia, and there are many Orthodox churches that are now on the new calendar. And if the issue were simply the calendar, but the calendar represented the first step in a program to westernize, to bring into this Western milieu, this Western ethos, the Orthodox world. And in fact, the man responsible for changing the calendar in Greece, Meletios Metazachis, when he changed the calendar for the State Church of Greece in 1923, he had planned even more radical reforms, abolition of the fasts, modernization of the ceremonies and liturgies, making them shorter, that to have priests educated in special schools so that they could be indoctrinated in the new ideas, and the abolition of the different feasts of the church, and the abolition of the monasteries, which he saw as his main opponents to change.
So he was going to get rid of them just for his own agenda of indoctrinating people into the use of this new calendar?
Well, he had a whole program, as the father was saying, of modernism, of trying to impose upon the Orthodox Church a whole bunch of practices that were contrary to the traditions of the Church, trying to bring it up to up to date to what he considered to be to the spirit of the times. But this is not the way a religion that truly believes in itself operates. It basically remains the pillar and foundation of the truth. It remains the criteria upon which the rest of humanity can rely in order to form judgments. And instead, this bishop is trying to basically say that the church is not adequate to that, and therefore has to adjust itself and completely change this and that and this and that and this and that. The calendar was simply one of the other things. And it's this lack of correct motivation, a sincere motivation from the principles of Christianity, but motivations on the basis of a humanistic social program trying to bring the church into the spirit of the times. And these times are radically deficient in the spirit, and yet he's trying to bring the church into accordance with them. And that's exactly the reverse of the way things should be. And that's the whole problem with the ecumenical movement, because it's trying to do the same thing.
Well, and I would go even further than that. I would say that the central problem of the ecumenical movement has been this anti-Christian bias built within the ecumenical movement. The leaders of the ecumenical movement have systematically, over time and progressively, introduced more novel ideas. They began first with a calendar. Then they began with the discussion of the abolition of the fasts. Then they began by shaving priests' beards and putting them in civilian clothes to systematically bring the Orthodox world closer to the Protestant world, to the world of individuality, of the world of the enlightened individual, which we've talked about in previous programs.
More than Protestant world, into the humanistic world. Yeah. This is a secularization of the church. It's a radical opposition to the basic identity of the church as the foundation of social mores and principles. And instead, the church is going to become, the puppet of these things, and that's not the way God. If God is God, you don't put man before God.
And I think the key point, as I said, is that this whole notion of a priest going to a seminary, a special school, in order to learn theology, as though one were studying a subject, is contrary to the Orthodox tradition. This is a Western idea of the creation of the university, the creation of a place to enlighten the individual mind, is in fact a foreign idea to the Orthodox world. As I mentioned in the previous program, the Orthodox had a more comprehensive and holistic understanding that as a child, by being a member of a family, learns the values of that family, by being a part of that family, by growing up within the confines and the community of that family, and he learns the rituals and rules of the family. That is the way one learns faith. That is the way the faith is passed on from generation to generation. The creation of special schools was in order to take people away, the way monasticism was supposed to take people out of the world, to indoctrinate them in Orthodox mindset. These new schools were designed to indoctrinate people into a modernist mindset, and then to take that modernist mindset to the world. In fact, when the modernists first sought to change the Roman Catholic Church, they didn't first go into the average parish and say, look, we're going to go tell the people we're going to remove the Latin, we're going to change the altars, we're going to take the nuns out of the habits, because the people would have rebelled and said, no, we're not going to do this.
Because that's tradition, and that's what we've known. And you're talking about Vatican II in the early 60s.
In fact, they began in the 30s. They first went to the seminaries. They created Catholic seminaries. They went to the seminaries, and they trained a whole generation of priests in these modernistic ideas. And then those priests then went like a contagion into the parishes and educated those parishioners. And then they did what they traditionally do, the ecumenists, is they appealed to the conservatives. I remember when John Paul XXIII, especially speaking of Roman Catholic experience, because my parents were converts to the Roman Catholic faith during the 50s, and they were witness to the changes that happened in the Roman Catholic Church as a result of Vatican II. And Vatican II was first called by John Paul XXIII to be
or Pope John the 23rd.
Pope John the 23rd, I should say. Pope John the 23rd, to be a restoration of the traditions of the Catholic Church.